Just a few weeks back, even Clair Obscur Expedition 33 was seen as the industry's darling. Everyone praised the game. They thought it was the best thing ever made, and it won big at the Game Awards. It became the blueprint, if you will, for many to follow in terms of making a game that people wanted to see more of in the future. But now with the developments surrounding AI and how people are perceiving it these days, Clair Obscur is not only being sacrificed, but honestly robbed of its accolades for using AI. And I decided to really submerge myself in this whole debate, try to really understand how far-reaching and how long AI has been in use in video games. And I've come to a conclusion that ultimately AI is not only here to stay, but the pushback in many ways is performative as well to a degree. No, I still don't think AI should be used to maybe replace all the art in, say, a game, but when it comes to, say, things like animation, lip syncing and such, which I will get into more later in the video, it's almost essential for many reasons. Obviously, this is a nuanced topic, so let me explain before anyone wants to tear me apart. I promise it'll make sense in the end, but there is good use and bad use, so let me explain that and then some, but let's first start with what inspired this video. From Insider Gaming, it's now confirmed that the Indie Game Awards has stripped Expedition 33 of its Game of the Year win due to its use of generative AI. I wish I was kidding about this, but it's real. The creators of this Indie Game Awards is a group named 61 Indie. They gave their reasoning, so let me read that for you as seen here. The Indie Game Awards have a hard stance on the use of Gen AI throughout the nomination process and during the ceremony itself. When it was submitted for consideration, representatives of Sandfall Interactive agreed that no Gen AI was used in the development of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. In light of Sandfall Interactive confirming the use of Gen AI on the day of the Indie Game Awards 2025 premiere, this does disqualify Clair Obscur Expedition 33 from its nomination. Now, because of this, the best debut game, which Clair did win originally, now has gone to Sorry We're Closed, which is another game. And Game of the Year has also now been stripped from them and given to Blueprints instead. This is not only kind of wrong, but genuinely baffling to see, because AI is practically used everywhere when it comes to game these days, including indies as well. To claim that this isn't true is honestly just lying, because all games to some degree are using AI to create what they make these days. Sure, it may not all be generative AI, but it is still, by definition, AI. Some easy to show examples would be games like No Man's Sky, a massive sprawling game with billions of planets to explore. Obviously, this game uses machine learning and procedural generation to create all of these planets and that content. This is, by definition, a use of AI, because the developers did not actually create billions of infinite worlds for you to discover, obviously. Instead, No Man's Sky uses AI to generate the assets needed to create the worlds that you explore. There is no way that a game could work and do what it does by handmade crafted worlds. It's just, let's be real guys, frankly impossible for them to do so. NPC behaviors in many games are also AI powered as well, because otherwise every game would take twice as long to create, and that's like the best case scenario. Let me give you some examples, okay? A great one is Final Fantasy VII Remake and its sequel Rebirth. The second game in that series especially is absolutely massive. I love the game, but it definitely 100% used AI in many ways in order to create its world, and that's just a fact. For example, Ryo Hara, who is the lead animation and cutscene programmer on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, admitted this as seen here, that Rebirth absolutely 100% has used AI and machine learning to enhance its NPC behaviors, and especially when it came to lip syncing. And if you played Rebirth or 7 Remake, you know there's plenty of dialogue in those games and tons of characters with very impressive lip syncing. It's even more impressive considering that Rebirth came out with multiple languages supported with full voice acting and subtitles at release. And obviously these languages were all lip synced to represent whichever language the game was localized in. Some of the languages included at release were English, French, German, Portuguese, Spanish, Japanese, and Italian. That's not only just the subtitles available too, ranging from everything I already said to, like, Chinese and then some. What's even more impressive is that when Rebirth first came out, just like Clair Obscur did, it released in multiple fully voice-synced languages too, allowing players all over the world to enjoy Rebirth just like they did Clair Obscur in whichever language they spoke. But the thing that made that possible was obviously the AI, or the machine learning as some would say, which is the same thing. Would you believe that Rebirth and Clair Obscur are now lesser games because these development teams developed technology that allowed them to create authentic lip syncs that match the supported languages? Of course not. It's amazing they're able to do this in the first place. Back in the day, when Japanese devs would make a game, the Japanese fans would get the game like a year or two before the English-speaking countries or anywhere else. If you're a fan of JRPGs, you were very, accustomed to this happening with pretty much every game you wanted to play. But this was because it took so long for these studios and their publishers to actually translate and make those games available in English and Spanish and all the other ones. But now with machine learning where it is, again, that is AI, now you don't have to wait anymore. Rebirth and many other JRPGs came out and everyone around the world could immediately play all these games day one on release. The same way Clair Obscur did that too in the multiple languages that it released in too. If you ask me, it's because of AI that you're able to enjoy the things you like quicker and more efficiently, and personally, I think this is a totally fine use for it. Like I said, okay, I've been educating myself on AI more and more, trying to understand it better. And when you genuinely look at what it does in video games alone, it's not only impressive, but borderline essential at this point depending on the game. No, again, I'm not saying that the art in the game should be all generated by a prompt, but the overall applications of what AI can do is obviously important. Go look at Fortnite even, how every single new emote or any other effect in that game can also be applied to any skin or character that you also play as. That is by definition because of AI as well. It's also the difference between you getting a new season of content of Fortnite every few months versus getting maybe one single new season every few years. It's because of that machine learning technology that you're able to play what you play, like whatever it is pretty much. Even CD Projekt Red, the people making Witcher and Cyberpunk, they also admitted to using AI recently too, but it makes total sense as to why they use it as well. As Tech4Gamers reported here, CDPR confirmed they won't be replacing devs with AI, but they do admit that they will still use it because they do, obviously, and already have. The most common use, like I said, with Rebirth and Clair is the machine learning lip syncing, and with how big these games tend to be these days, you gotta be honestly crazy if some animation developer is gonna have to sit there animating by hand every single word spoken by every character in every language before release. If they actually did that by hand, those animators would become human husks, dude. They would never see their families. They'd have to be locked in a cage somewhere in a basement at the development studio just matching lips to words for the rest of time. CDPR already used AI as well to recreate a deceased voice actor's voice for his character to reprise his role in Phantom Liberty, the Cyberpunk DLC. This was also done using AI, but also it was done with the family's blessing to do so. It wasn't only that though. Remember the Witcher 4 tech demo that came out where they showed how they were using Unreal Engine? That demo, 100%, was using AI as well. One of the machine learning uses in that demo was photogrammetry tools like Reality Scan. This is a technology that developers can use to streamline how they can create assets and their backgrounds. This use of generative AI and such is also used to create dynamic NPC interactions, and they can also be used to enhance procedural generation, much like I said already with No Man's Sky earlier. So it's not like games don't use AI. They absolutely do. And at this point, trying to paint the world as bad if they do use AI, it's just not really going to work. It's as Adam Jensen in Deus Ex Human Revolution said, you can't stop progress, and that's true. You may be wondering, well, how far back does the use of AI even go? Actually, a very long time back. In the 1950s, you had games like OXO in 1952, which was a digital tic-tac-toe game that used a basic AI framework for the opponents you faced. It was actually developed by Alexander Douglas as a part of his PhD thesis on human-computer interactions at the University of Cambridge. And this OXO game used a computer, which was AI, in the 1950s again, to simulate the perfect opponent for a human to face in digital tic-tac-toe. Even Pong in the 1970s, which you know what that game is, that used AI for its opponents and as well as with its paddle control. Maze War, that's a game that came out in 1974, that used AI to randomize its levels for players to play through. You even had games like Rogue and Elite in the 1980s also using randomized rudimentary machine learning to enhance their games too, which also allowed for procedural generation and things like the dungeons in those games also being random as well. That same tech would be iterated further obviously once something like No Man's Sky would come out like 30 years later. But the 1990s to 2000s AI machine learning had evolved into various other concepts that have and are still being used today. Modern Gen AI is also a part of this. You also have Stable Diffusion, which is for assets that was also a part of that time frame of AI use too. This all evolved into what you guys are seeing today, with games being able to do lip syncing much easier and a lot faster, games being created quicker, and things like animation animations being synonymously used across any character model like in Fortnite, or really any game you want to use as an example here, it all works too. Basically, the use of AI has existed in video games since the dawn of video games itself. From 1950 to right now, which is almost 100 years ago, AI has existed and has been used to some degree in the creation of many video games. Of course, people will say, well, it depends on how it is used, which is true to an extent. The be-all, end-all slam dunk, however, is you can't claim that AI has no place in making video games these days when it existed in the medium before you were even likely born pretty much, or even knew what a video game was in the first place. Removing AI from video games is like removing the concept of electricity from human civilization. It's become essential for so many reasons. I don't think I really need to tell you how important electricity is to your daily life, obviously. Now, yes, there are uses of AI where it's just low effort slop that is, put on storefronts, like this game, for example, called Horror Night with Tung Sahur, which is a real game and is obviously something made in like a weekend by someone to trick people into buying it. Or other slop like the very uniquely named Tung Sahur Extreme, as you can see here. Another fully AI-made lazy video game that is just full of stolen assets. Yes, I understand that there are extremes and nuance in any medium, and I'm not going to defend these slop Tung Sahur games, because they're obviously not the norm, and they are extreme examples of bad AI use, I know that. But to then frame Clair Obscur, or say Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Witcher 3, 4, Cyberpunk, or Pong in any way, where they are somehow synonymous and just as bad as Tung Sahur Legends, or as you can see right here, or something like that, is just being disingenuous, and we kind of all know that. Some websites like El Pace, I probably said that wrong, but anyways, they interviewed Clair Obscur's development team like earlier this year, and when it came to their creation of their game and all that. However, there was a very interesting added section to their article, which is months old at this point, but proves that the Indie Game Awards removing the wins for Clair Obscur to be nothing short of performative nonsense at best. Let me read you this from El Pace because it's important, as it says here. The studio states that it was in contact with El Pace on April 25th, 2025, 3 months prior to this publication. During these exchanges, Sandfall Interactive indicated that it had used a limited number of pre-existing assets, notably 3D assets sourced from the Unreal Engine marketplace. None of these assets were created using artificial intelligence. Sandfall Interactive further clarifies that there are no generative AI created assets in the game. When the first AI tools became available in 2022, some members of the team briefly experimented with them to generate temporary placeholder textures. Upon release, instances of a placeholder texture were removed within 5 days to be replaced with the correct textures that had always been intended for release, but were missed during the quality assurance process. So this confirms by Sandfall Interactive that they used AI prior to the game actually being released, but it was only in a placeholder sense, meaning that it wasn't meant to be there when the game came out. It was like a virtual band-aid, if you will, put in place while they worked on everything else around it. But these were then replaced with real art, as it was always intended to be at release, as they said, and that is exactly which they did. That also means right now, if you were to play Clair Obscur, you would 100% see zero generative AI in the game at all, according to Sandfall. This means, by definition, what the Indie Game Awards have done with Clair by removing it is nothing short of honestly performative nonsense at best. They are simply sacrificing this game as some sort of tribute to their peers to either strike the fear of God in them, or like I said earlier, it is what it's always been, performative nonsense. We all know that award shows these days are more performative than really ever before. Awards for stuff that doesn't really matter, like Games for Impact, yet these award shows also never award voice actors in other languages, or even recognize them besides the English ones in like the Game Awards, for example, too. There's so much missing context in these things, but when it comes to the Indie Game Awards, it's extra stupid due to the other awards that they do have at their own award show to this day. For example, the Indie Game Awards has an entire separate category for games that have only Black developers, and no, I'm not even kidding. As seen here, Althea is a game that won for Black voice in gaming, which is ridiculous, but that's true. Why do you have a category specifically tied to one race of people over others, and then you're rewarding them for that? It's just peak performative activist nonsense on display. There's no way you can justify that award without it either sounding pandering or condescending. This is just the Indie Game Awards saying they think that Black developers are somehow, what exactly, not good enough to compete with other developers in like the same category? How is this not racist of them to do so? And why do you have an award category for emotional impact? Do you mean stories? Like a best story category? Why all this performative nonsense? Like it doesn't even make sense there or even end here. Look at this award category. Latin American Indie Award. Why are you segregating all Latin developers away from everyone else too now? This also just sounds racist to me in the same way the Black Voice one is too. This is the Indie Game Awards saying that Latin developers are also now somehow not good enough to compete with everyone else evenly on the same playing field, so they need their own category, which is what an insult to Latin game developers. They're acting like these people are like less than others or something, so why are you coddling them in their own category like this? Doesn't end there either. Like, look, they did it again, man. This time it's the South African Indie Game Award category. So Latin, Black, and South African developers are just not good enough, I guess, to compete with other countries, so you gave these people all their own award category. How is this even allowed? They even have a Southeast Asian Indie Game Award, which doesn't make any sense either. They're just carving up the world's demographic into smaller various groups, making all of these awards feel more pointless because none of them are even competing against one another. It doesn't even end there. Look at this. They have a woman-led indie game award category too. Like, are we being serious right now? So now we're also having women being segregated? I thought we had equality. This is just the indie game awards saying that they also don't think that women are somehow good enough to compete against male developers now? This is pathetic. Every award category I just mentioned is 100% real, by the way, and you may have noticed how out of all of these categories that I did mention, I scoured the winners. There's not a single award for, say, best RPG indie game or best like adventure game or something. Maybe even like a best horror indie game category. There's nothing. They don't even categorize the indie games that are nominated based on their genres. They only either put these games in these weird virtue signaling categories like best Black or Asian person game, or they give women an award, which what even is a woman to these people? Let's be real. I'm sure they can't even answer that either without being scorned by their peers. So these people who have like 1/3 of their award categories dedicated to just people in various parts of the world competing exclusively amongst themselves instead of it being international exist. And Clair Obscur is removed from its wins because it uses generative AI, despite the developers confirming that that has been removed months ago and it was only placeholder assets, which every game under the sun does, by the way. And I mean placeholder assets, that's what I'm talking about. Like, how else do you think developers make levels and worlds? They usually start as like gray boxes with physics and such. The actual art does not come until much later, obviously. Blueprints, which then won Game of the Year now, instead said this recently via Twitter. Let me read you this. For people that need confirmation, there is no AI used in Blueprints. The game was built and crafted with full human instinct by Tonda Ross and his team. It is the result of 8 years of development fueled by imagination and creativity, and we are extremely proud of what Tonda has achieved. It's going to be hilarious when people look through that game and it comes out eventually that Blueprints does in fact use AI to some degree, because it'll just prove how all of this is just nonsense at best. The reality is that you can't omit games from being nominated for using AI because everything to some degree is using AI. If any game nominated at this Indie Game Awards has enemies in them that you fight with your character in any capacity, they are using AI to do that. It's literally NPC behavior trained by a computer to simulate difficulty towards a player's actions. If you have difficulty settings, you are using AI. If you have any sort of animations that get reused on different enemies or characters, AI was used there too. Like, this is just indie people trying to act like they're holier than thou when they really aren't. Clair Obscur should have never been ripped of their award. And in all honesty, if I was Sandfall, I wouldn't even put my next game to be considered with them because they clearly don't respect what you did anyways, and they're probably just jealous. Imagine leaving AAA development behind, literally parting the heavens with your small team to make this miracle of a game happen in the first place, and then some dorks who drink Pabst Blue Ribbon beer unironically with their mustaches and thick-rimmed glasses going, your game is AI, so you're out now? Please. Look, nobody is saying they want the entire game industry to be made with AI only. Every game to some, even like the tongue Sahur monstrosity games. But can we at least admit that if you remove AI entirely from the making of your video games, that you will genuinely lose like 99% of the games that have been made in the last 75 years alone? Like, it's impossible to remove from the equation, because in all honesty, games can't really exist without AI. You can't have Dark Souls or Elden Ring without it. Your amazing boss battles and enemies attacking you out of nowhere in a Souls-like is because developers are using machine learning AI to teach their NPCs how to react to how you play the game. Ever fight a boss in Elden Ring and their moveset changes when you put enough distance between you and them and then they start using projectile attacks? That's a form of AI. That's the game recognizing you in real time, trying to break the rules of combat by not staying close and engaging the boss. So the AI has to now teach the big scary boss enemy behaviors that if the player moves away, you now attack with this move and then you do this string of combos instead. Oh, the player's now in your face again. Well, start swinging with your arms and your weapons and try to eat the player now instead. Like, are we really going to pretend that these things can exist without the use of such technology in the first place? Like I said, I've been educating myself on its use, and it's clearly not nearly as bad as some people are making it out to be. Again, I'm not saying that I want the next Larian game to be an AI prompt created from scratch by their CEO hitting a single button and that's it. But come on, man, these people are being crazy with how much they're being against it. They're gonna look you dead in the eye and say that we hate AI, and then go play Super Mario or Zelda or Sekiro or Battlefield or something, not realizing that all those games and their enemies and behaviors and everything they're all a computer learning system, and they're all reacting to your actions. To me, it just seems like the industry is now suddenly attacking Clair Obscur specifically because it gave people what they wanted without pandering. There's no forced nonsense in it, no ideological box ticking. It was just a good game, and these people just seem to hate that or something. It just comes off as jealousy. It's why I always say you can't hate access media enough these days. These people are about as genuine as some random Somalian prince in your email box right now telling you that he wants to give you millions of dollars for free pretty much. Nothing you do will ever be enough for activists because you can never meet their demand because these people are frankly crazy. Here's one YouTuber guy who reviews movies named Reg or Reggie saying that Clair Obscur's development team is problematic because they're all white people. You see what I mean? How can you satisfy these sorts of people? You could give them all your money in your bank account and they'll still get offended. And they'll say, well, why didn't you give me all the money that's in your parents' account too? Like, it's impossible. Here's another post that was circulating online where someone claimed that Sandfall is racist and they wouldn't hire someone because of their skin color. You see what I mean? They just say things and hope people that believe them, I guess. Like, these are the sorts of people you are trying to cater to when you think you have to do things their way only. These people are crazy. They never know what they really want. All they know is they want to be outraged, and that's pretty much it. And it's stupid how it's only ever a problem when a development team is mostly white but not anything else. I wonder why they didn't have a white voice in gaming award at the Indie Game Awards, but they have one for pretty much everyone else, women included. It's just an activist award show, and it's sad how people online are actually looking at this like the Indie Award show has any pedigree of actual importance. Ultimately, it won't change much of anything, especially as time continues on, because the use of AI is always going to be here to stay. It's the same with Larian Studios, Baldur's Gate 3, and Divinity, and that whole thing too. That entire whole scenario is a mess, sure, but even when their projected AMA in early 2026 that they're going to have, it's still not going to make Larian not use AI because they always have. I guess it's up to you on an individual level what you deem is good or not when it comes to AI. But honestly, at this point, it is what it is. I'm not going to boycott a game because they use AI, because if I did that, I would then have to boycott everything ever made pretty much, which is obviously never going to work. But the Indie Game Awards removing Clair Obscur is just another virtue signaling from an institution full of that sort of nonsense already. And I think Tectone on Twitter kind of said it best, which reads, if AI helps make games as good as Clair Obscur, I want more AI in games. Like I said, you can't stop progress no matter what you do. And let's be real, if companies want to use AI for things like localization, even with how the whole gaming and anime scene has been rampant, with localizers changing lines to push their agendas instead, that's another place I'm not really surprised is embracing more AI as we go forward either. Basically, if you want your games day one across the world, you want games to not take 10 years to make per installment, and you want games to relatively retain their price points these days, it's inevitable. It still doesn't mean I think Gen AI is a good idea for art or the story, or that voice actors should be replaced forever. No, but if it can be used to expedite the far more boring and honestly tedious parts of development, which is what it is doing already, then it is a net positive. But I've spoken enough. What do you think about AI in games? Is it good or not? Let me know. Thanks for watching. Go enjoy some video games, and I'll see you guys next time.